Want you to?
We are live.
Thank you, Mrs. DeGraw. We'll go ahead and call our regular board meeting to order. I want to welcome all of you in the audience. And we want to excuse Mr. Burtonshaw from being here. He had some work that needed to get done. And Mr. Williams is joining us via Zoom today. So first, we will have Mrs. Perkins lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The floor would be open for a motion to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair, I so moved.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Floor would be open for a motion to approve the minutes from our previous meeting.
Madam Chair, that should not be there. That should be down in 3.1, because we need to wait. I apologize that I didn't catch that.
No problem. Okay, did we have any public comment?
No.
All righty. Move along then. The floor will be open for a motion to approve the consent agenda, including the minutes from our previous meeting.
Madam Chair, I so moved.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Our first action item, we have an emergency closure for August 27th. Thank you for bringing that up there.
It's opening weird.
Maybe.
We'll see if this will open up. There it goes. All right. On August 27th, we had that issue with the well. And so we canceled classes for a facility issue. And we just need to have this verified, certified, excuse me, that the school board is aware of that.
The chair will entertain a motion to certify the emergency closure for the dates mentioned above.
Madam Chair, I so moved.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Next, we have the SIP, the Continuous Improvement Plan, and the Strategic Plan.
All right, I'm working on a different computer while I'm out of the boardroom, so thank you for your patience. Appreciate everybody, especially Mrs. DeGraw getting this all ready to go. So the continuous improvement plan, and I'll pull this up in a second. This is our continuous improvement and strategic plan. It is required through Idaho code, and each October we need to have that resubmitted to the State Board of Education. I'm going to pull this up. And this is one we've talked about the last two different school board meetings, received input from board members, different groups. There's not a lot of change with anything on the mission and vision statement, maybe a couple words here or there, but our goals are all going to stay the same. This is one that even with our recent PLC teams, we felt like we want to keep the same mission and vision. And the four goals that we have: quality teaching and learning, fiscal responsibility, school environment and safety, community relations, and communications. I think I want to touch on one on the quality teaching and learning that is somewhat of a change from previous years. Oh, right here. Under the strategy for explore and expand standards-based learning. This is one through our PLC process that we are still continuing and feel it's such an important thing for us to do. One of the changes is going to be at the secondary level. And so the elementary will have the standards-based approach to teaching and reporting, which means that the report cards will still use the standards-based approach. The secondary is going to continue a standards-based approach. And so we're not changing anything with the instruction, but we will use those standards to inform grades. One of the biggest complications we've had at the secondary level when it comes to grade checks, other things, especially the standards-based reporting process, is a process that does highlight learning a lot more. However, the reporting part is the same at the university. So when kids graduate high school, by the time they get to the university just wants to know what their GPA is. And they don't really have any concern about the learning of the kids. And so we're trying to mesh these two worlds where we still follow the best teaching practices. And so that's one thing that we are changing a little bit. So our high school, our secondary, which would be 7 through 12, the grades will still be using standards to have them, but we're going to convert them over to a letter grade and percentage. However, the teachers are still able to use our student learning system to really fine tune where those holes are at with the kids. Do I have any questions on that part?
So that's high school we're talking about right there.
Yes. And that came by recommendation from our admin teams and also the guiding coalition from the PLC.
Okay.
Should I continue on?
Yes.
Okay. And Mrs. DeGroff, I don't hear a comment there, if you wouldn't mind, because I believe you're closer to that microphone.
Yes.
The metric portion, and this is where we've talked the last couple months. I did get the academic data that was pulled in. If we remember, this one over here is the goal that the school board has. These goals will really develop just off of what our previous years were. The black on this side is the goal from the board last year. The red is the actual amount. I do want to speak on why I have this yellow 89.7%. So there's literally 4 different places that the school district and the administration, the public, can go to find data on schools. And sometimes when they pull it, it's difficult to find all of it. This link right here is the idahoschools.org. That is a report card that the public can go to, and it shows academic data. However, it's usually about 2 years behind. And so I went into the State Department website and also into the state board. I know those are 2 separate groups, but I needed to go to different places to find the information. The 4-year graduation rate, how that works is anytime a student enrolls in our school in secondary or high school, and if they move away, it's our responsibility to try to track them down to see where they went, to track and make sure that they either graduate or not. And just saying that does lend itself to some difficulty at times. Some kids return to their country of origin. Others disappear, homeschool, we can't get anything from it. So the actual state number is reporting 83, but after I talked with Mr. Guimar, there's several students on that we do know where they're at. It just hasn't gone through the reporting process. So when I say the actual number that we know is 89.7, even though it's reflected in the state report as 83. The ISAT scores, I want to jump down. The ISAT scores were not where I wanted them to be, just to be honest. We took a dip on some of our grade levels, and we've done some things to address that. I went ahead and added a different column. This is one that I just created. It wasn't on last year's continuous improvement program, but it will be a better tool for us. As these metrics here that are there in this chart, these are ones that are required by the state to have. So they're the ones that choose 8th grade, 8th grade, 8th grade, and then 6th grade, 6th grade. So it's really only looking at 2, but I wanted us to look at all of our schools, all of our ones. So I put this together where we have 3 different columns. We have a math column, ELA, and science. It has the category or the grade, the percent proficient, and adequate growth. So if you look at the top line, you can see that the state averages across that. So 43.2 would be the average for the state, and adequate growth would be 52. And then you can see that state's 54, growth 64. Science, it was the first year of science. That's why the 42. And the green, of course, are the ones that I highlighted as the good parts, but I want to talk about the ones that jump out to me as concerning, and some of the things that I talk about in the narrative on what we're doing to address them. So this last year in ELA, and even math, our 5th and 6th grade scores in ELA, especially the 6th grade, are very concerning. This is something that we as a district have made some changes in assignments of teachers. We feel like we have a more experienced teacher in this grade level, as well as with a recent adoption for curriculum. We're finding that these are things that we need to ensure that we have those in place. The 8th grade, their math overall score was one of the lower ones in the district. That's another area. But I did put over here, like, this would be the class of 28, the class of 29, and so forth. So next year we'll be able to follow that data and see how we're doing with the different classes. I still have the ability to go back and pull data if we want to get the last 3 or 4 years for us to look at. But one of the things we've talked about in the past is, and even last year in ELA, that by the time the kids get through to the high school level, we're actually performing above the state average. And that's consistent with some of the things that I've reported in past years. So that makes me feel a little bit better that we know that throughout the process, the kids are still improving. In the science, it's the same thing with our science ISAT. 41 was the average for high schools in the state, and we were right at the state average. And so we are aware of these things. But again, not every student, when we look at this type of data, it's really important to remember, not every student takes this test. We had a pretty high participation rate, but there are some families who choose to opt out their students from this test. So it's not a true measure of all students. Other things that can bring in some issues of how accurate are the scores are apathy from the students. It's a test that they're given online. It's really hard for us to monitor how seriously the kids take the test. Our administration has been talking about ways to try to encourage our kids to have more, I guess, pride in their academics and wanting to do well with it. But those are some things that, regardless if that's an issue, we still have to ask the hard questions. And that's why we looked at curriculum, we looked at teacher placements, and we made some changes with that. Do I have any questions on this part from the board or comments?
Well, anything under 30, it just seems like there's a lot of things under 30. I mean, 30 is even kind of low, but I thought we really started to stress math, and I'm not seeing math.
You know, there are other levels, and again, it's just in this measure.
If one of those tests can't tell us what's happening, what can? How do we know how they're really doing?
That's a good question. That's a good question. With we have that available in our reading curriculum, where we do have district measures. Right now, the new curriculum that we have for math does allow for us to do similar things to what we've done with our 95% program in reading.
As we see occasionally good scores coming through. I mean, with the 95 reading, and then I thought, you know, we have a big emphasis on math. And then when I see these scores all under 30 over on this first page, this page number 6, there's 1, 2.
Yeah, and that's just the 2 grade levels.
Yeah, the 2 grade levels. It's, I just wonder how they're really doing. I look at this and I think, is this how they're doing? Or is there something else that can tell me how they're doing?
Yeah. This, like I said, this is one measure. I don't want to downplay it, but I also don't want to put
Too much
every
on-
little thing that's happening with it. And so that's why we are taking the steps that we're doing
I know,
to
yeah.
address them.
yes, but I just wonder how, I can never see how they're really doing, if this isn't how they're really doing.
As I mentioned, the new math curriculum for elementary does have some of those benchmarks built into the curriculum. But again, we're on our 3rd week of using that. And so I wouldn't have any way to report on that yet.
Okay.
So when you show these measurements on the male and female, is that district wide?
That is district wide. And you can see that the females do outperform our males across the board. And the bottom would be economically disadvantaged and not economically disadvantaged. And those are just some of the different reports that we have that I wanted to pull just to see if there's ways that maybe, you know, when we see numbers like this, we want to look at it and say, well, what can we do to encourage our male students to help them learn? And it is a challenge. It's a challenge, not just in our district.
Is it typical for the girls to score that much higher than the boys? Do you know why that's happening?
Partly, let's be honest, girls are smarter.
Yeah.
I think in school,
Female board up here.
yeah, sorry, Chris. I think partly school is harder for boys in a way because boys tend to be more active, hands-on, and the learning part runs easier for girls. I was talking with Mrs. Scott a little bit, and we didn't dive into this, but there are actually studies that are coming back now that if you remember over the past 20 years, there's been a huge push for girls in math and girls in STEM and focusing on the girls, that girls are outperforming boys. And I think that's partly because could be attributed to that. Well, and you also could say, well, maybe that movement has helped the girls, but it is something where just trying to get the boys to take it seriously. I'm also wondering if, like, I'm interested to see what our cell phone stuff is doing. The initial things that I'm hearing is that it's limiting distractions a ton in the classes. That doesn't mean it's perfect, but it's really good. And I've heard from Mrs. DeGraw, your camera got bumped.
No. I was turning your volume down.
Oh, am I really loud there? Sorry, guys.
Julie said that you're loud compared to the rest.
Okay. But it's something that we do need to just keep our eye on as we go to the other areas. This is one area again. So this is the IRI. So this is taken on the computer program called the iStation. And again, the kindergarten number was one that jumped out at me as shocking. And this is a combination of both Hamer and Terraton kindergarten classes. And on one hand, it's mostly attributed to, I don't know if the kids are as comfortable on the computerized testing as they are in person. And I'm going to jump back up here in a second because there's some positives. Because this next one here is the metric that we have for our own district. And this is with the 95% program. And this is where we test kids individually and teach them individually on the foundational skills of literacy. And we have 92% of our kids who are achieving these goals by different grade levels. By kindergarten, they should be at skill 2, first grade skill 5, and so forth up to 4th grade. And this program is doing a great job of showing that. I just don't know why it's not transferring over into a computerized test. And that's the question. Should it not? There's different things that we looked at. And and also, as I said down in the narrative on this section, some of the things we looked at were when we went to a State Department training in May, that was with Mrs. Erickson and myself, we were able to identify that schools that are consistently being able to do well in their school-based programs, but also on these other assessments, they had a stronger curriculum. They had a stronger thing in place, which we didn't have. And so that's why we're taking the steps we're taking. And I know it feels like we've been talking about this since May, because we have, but it doesn't change overnight. Like, that's the thing. These things take a process to go. Some of the positives, again, though, is by the time the kids get to third grade, nearly 73% of the kids are proficient on the computerized test. And then according to our goals here, the fourth grade met the district goals. So that kind of speaks to what you were saying, Nedra, a little bit about, I don't know what it is on the tests, because I know our kindergartners in both of our schools, and having a kindergartner that it's gone through this program, I know that they're really strong in their foundational skills. I just don't know why it's not correlating to the computerized test.
Why are these tests are way higher than these others, and it gives you, well, of course, they're different grades, never mind.
Well, but the IRI, what's the difference between the IRI and the ISATs? Because the IRI, we're not meeting those benchmarks, but then the ISATs we are.
It's the lower grade. Does it make any difference? Is it an easier
Well,
test?
these benchmarks were the ones that we chose that we were hoping to hit. And I took the one from the year before. Last year, like I said, we were above the state average overall, and we did take a dip this year. And that's why Mrs. Erickson shared that with you when she came in and talked about curriculum. We're aware of that. Our teachers are working hard. We just need to keep at it.
Are we testing kids that ESL kids?
On this last year's test, absolutely. We test every kid. And if there's a kid that moves in last minute, which we did have several kids that moved in end of April, the first part of May, they go on our scores. And so that's why when we look at these tests, we do test everybody. And again, it's not an excuse. We still need to work hard and try to help them with it, but everybody shows up on this, whether they're on a student with a IEP or a student that comes from a household that has 2 college professors as their parent. They test them all. The last goal that we have would be a goal just to see to help high school seniors complete the FAFSA, which is the format where they are able to apply for colleges and get help with that. We had 21 students that finished that. We were hoping that 24, so we fell a little bit short. But part of that is we have kids who choose military service or church missionary service, and sometimes they just don't care to fill it out, even if we have the different FAFSA nights, which we do. Even helping out with FAFSA in second language, where Mr. Guimar does speak Spanish. He has different nights to help those parents out there. Those are attended, but we will keep working with that. Again, this is just trying to help encourage our high school seniors, make sure they're jumping through all the different hoops and able to get the financial aid or apply for colleges. The narrative, I've already talked on the narrative portion of the continuous improvement plan all the way through. And the last one, well, I did put in the optional that I added the chart of the ISAT data and staff performance. This one here reflects our 95% goal. And all of our teachers do have different academic goals, but we cannot report on them publicly because of what they call N size, because each teacher in 5th grade, there's not enough of them to present it publicly. But it is connected. These things here are connected to our teachers' evaluations and goes on to their final evaluation as well. So does the board have any questions on our continuous improvement plan? Like to add anything or change anything?
Don't look like it.
Okay. So at this point, Madam Chair, I'll turn the time back over to you for the action item. If there's more discussions or questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, I was wondering if you don't mind looking at page 4. Under fiscal responsibility. Under key actions, develop a 10 to 20 year long range facilities plan. Are we doing that? Are we going to be doing that? Page 4.
So to answer your question, if we're going to develop a 10 to 20 year long range, the answer is yes. That's one that we started talking about that in June and mentioned that that's part of our long-term plan. It's also a requirement of receiving the funds from the facilities funds of House Bill 521. And that's
Involved in that?
what's that?
Is the board involved in that?
The board can always give feedback. The process of this, the state has an app or a website that Mr. Erickson and I are going to go in and fill out and rank the needs of every single building. And that will help us identify the needs, and then we'll put together a rubric of these are the things that we have to accomplish. And yes, the board will be aware of that and can give feedback on those as well.
Okay, thank you. How about the next goal, school environment and safety? Are we going to apply for that SOF grant? Who does that? Who does the applying for that? Who does the work?
Oh. We have applied for and received that. That's the grant that we were able to.
But you said do it again.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's
in combination with Mr. Erickson, Mr. Williams,
Oh,
and
okay,
then I would provide the financial side of the thing.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mrs. Perkins. All right, there's no further discussion. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the continuous improvement plan for 2024-25.
Madam Chair, I'm so moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Mrs. DeGraw, do we have any purchase spending surplus approval?
Yes, we do. I should have you read my action items, maybe. I just put in a word in there. I should have you read my action items.
Yeah, I didn't get this one before.
Mrs. DeGraw, would you be willing to talk on this action item for us as it relates to a payroll, the payroll time clock that we have?
So we use a program called Time Clock Plus to do clock in, clock out, to track leave and stuff. We were up for a renewal this year and found that there was a significant savings if we went with a 7-year contract and paid it up front. There was savings if we went to put a 7, but by paying it up front, then we saved even more. And we would like to be able to do this and pay up front.
This program, I think they've used it for as long as I've been superintendent, which has been the last 5 years. And I believe several years before that as well, probably all during the previous superintendent Richens' time as well.
And it does integrate with my budget and payroll system. So as we learn more about that.
What's that significant savings?
I think it was at least $1,000 of savings. By doing it up front. I can't remember the exact number right now. Unfortunately, they did not put it in order by year, and I'm not sure why they didn't.
I mean, we've been paying by the year.
Yeah. But this one, so it has 26, 27, then 27, 28, 29, 30, then 28, 29, like the years that they have listed there, they're just out of order. So there is an increase,
Each year.
not for the first 3 years. Yeah, for the first 3 years, it stays that same number and they are projecting, there will be an increase after that, but it's lower than it would be if we just paid year by year.
And
Do you know how much you've been paying?
About around the 2,000.
those are the figures there each year.
So this is the future, not what we have been,
Right.
but it's around the 2,000 range.
So what's best is to pay an amount each year, to pay a great big lump sum. Where are we gonna get that from?
Is the money available to pay it in lump sum?
Yes, in our technology funds.
Technology?
Yes. We have a software renewals fund code in there.
Oh. Your recommendation is to do this.
Yes, my recommendation is do this. I don't foresee wanting to leave this platform. If it was a platform that I was struggling with, I would not be recommending a 7-year contract. But it allows us to set parameters as to employees that can plug in and out on campus.
And if it,
Employees who can use their phone.
and as it makes changes or additions or
Yep.
betterment, it does that for us too. you know, just-
Absolutely, it's a web-based, but we're able to limit it. Our bus drivers all have it on their phone because the majority of them start at their homes each morning. And so they wouldn't be on our server to clock in. But the majority of the rest of the employees have to be on our campus, on our server to be able to clock in.
And Mr. Williams wants us to do this too.
I feel like where we have the money already in the technology account to help with it, and it will save over time. I wish we would have had the other one where they said this is how much that you're actually saving. That would have given the board a better opportunity to on this decision. But I believe that they usually prorated it up more if we were going on a shorter if it was annually or on a shorter term.
And if we pay annually, it will go up each year, where for the first 3 years, we're not gonna have an increase.
Because we've used it for quite a while. I'm nervous to make a 7-year commitment to anything.
I understand that, and normally I'm hesitant to. But it's a good program, and there's good support.
All right, any other questions or discussion?
Madam Chair, as I'm looking at, so as Mrs. DeGrasse said, these weren't in, I think the benefit to doing that is they hold us steady for the first 3 years. And then you can see that it starts going up by a certain amount. I wish like I said, that is just not the best organization from their bill to us. But if we didn't do it, we would pay for this amount, 2346, and then the next year would jump up to that next year, and then it would keep going. And so there is a savings in the long term. But if it's something that the board is cautious on, like, we would just pay that amount every single year as well. So either way, it's one that if the board, like I would want this, but I'm also neutral if the board is skeptical of the 7-year contract.
We go out of business.
Do we get a refund?
We do have to have a time clock system. So whether if this is the one that we've been using and we're comfortable with, to me, that's what makes sense is to keep it. Even if we were to say, oh, we didn't like this, which is not the case, we would have to go find something else. And there's no guarantee that it's going to be cheaper either. It's just part of the ongoing cost to run business.
You don't think they'll go out of business?
No.
No.
All right.
I would be open for a motion on the chair will entertain a motion to approve the proposed Time Clock Plus subscription. The amount and time listed there.
Madam Chair, I so moved.
Is there a second?
One second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Mr. Williams, will you refresh your board docs one more time?
We're moving right along to the superintendent report. It looks like you have some guest speakers.
There we go. I'd like to thank our speakers for coming in. Before I turn the time over to them, we have Mrs. Dixon, who's our coordinator for our special education department. I also have Mrs. Erickson, and for giving an update on Saracen Elementary. And is Mrs. Dowling in there as well?
Yeah, I thought I had put her slideshow on, but it's not there, so I will get that added right now.
We'll get it loaded up before we get there. I just wanted to touch on a quick thing first, just as way of an announcement, just to reiterate the calendar change that took place on the emergency board meeting 2 days ago. Oops. That tomorrow there is no school. This is going to be the change that the board voted on. So tomorrow there is no school, but on the 18th, it's going to be a regular day for 7 through 12, no school for PK through 6, and it will be a teacher contract day on that one. Just as information, when we're looking at, well, how many extra days do we have? Each one of these boxes is I'm using my fingers as a quote, is a calendar that I send to the state, to the state calendar, state finance office. And so Hamer Kindergarten, when they started the year, they had 63 extra days. That's just because our kindergartners go all day long. That's an awesome opportunity for kids to get a lot of schooling. And then you can see across all the days that were extra. Our high school, they had 5.2 days to start. Now with the emergency closure, we only have 4.2. That's something I'm going to have to keep in mind. I know we're all praying for a really snowy winter to help with the water situation. That's one that we're just going to have to keep an eye on. But with the additional days remaining with that amendment, you can see that this is the amount that's going to be available for those other calendars. Mrs. DeGraw, do we want to talk on the part with the fundraiser right now, or should I turn the time over to Mrs. Williams since I can't read the room?
To the rally for Rue.
Okay.
Pull up the picture, it's the bottom one.
All right, let me get these pulled up. And if you would be able to talk on that for me while you're there in the room, I'd appreciate that.
One of our employees, a cheerleading coach, Kinsey Sauer, her little girl Rue got a virus in June, which for her heart. and she's been at Primary Children's since then, in and out of it, but she's not been able to come home. She is currently in the place where they're starting the process of putting her on the transplant list. And as a district, we felt like we needed to do something to help this family, especially, you know, not only for little Rue, but for her brothers. They're students here, and we're working with them to keep them caught up, but this is a really hard thing for their family to be going through. The elementary hosted a bake sale the last 3 days. Community has shown up in droves to help provide things to sell. We've had pure donations being sent in. And we're sharing with you guys the QR code for our Venmo, if anybody's interested in also donating. But we felt very strongly that this was important for us to do. And then our October 4th football game, it's our senior night. All proceeds from concessions will also go to this family. So,
From concessions.
yeah, the concession group and special ed, we're going to do that night as a fundraiser for their group. And they have made the decision to sacrifice that opportunity and provide these funds for this family.
No, there's lots of people in the district that have made this possible. I just appreciate everybody willing to help this family, and it's one thing that a lot of people, we live in a really good community. I just want to say thank you to them. Mrs. Dixon, are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready. I don't get called. All right. Right, you keep calling Mrs. Burns.
I do. All right, I was just asked to come and report on how some of our summer stuff went with our special ed kids. So we always have our migrant summer school option that's for our migrant students. And Mrs. Trio does an amazing job of setting that up and running it. But this spring, she said, hey, let's try to get some of our sped kids to come to this. And since I've been here teaching, we haven't been able to do that. So we were like, let's try it. So we offered it to some of our students that we felt could use just staying on a routine, reached out to their parents, and we were able to get 3 of our students to come. And then we had 3 of our paras. We have the best paras in this district ever. They're just so good. They were willing to come. It was for the weeks up there. Class went from 8 to 12, Monday through Thursday. And then buses were able to bring our students to and from school. If you click on the next one. So Mrs. Trio is who completely put this on, and this was their theme and their agenda. And it was a huge success for some of our sped kids. Some of our students struggle with being in big groups or loud noises. And by the end of this summer school, our students were right in the mix of it, and they wanted to come. They were telling their mom school, like every day they were ready to come to school. So we would like to move forward and keep trying to have our sped kids that could benefit from routine come to the summer program. Do you have any questions on that before we move on?
Did I miss it, or did you say how many?
We had 3.
3 kids.
And these individuals require a one-on-one assistant. So we had the 3 paras that came and were
And
with
how
them.
many could have come?
It could be offered to any. We would like
But
to
how many
open
kids
it.
do you have?
Right now on our caseload, we have 60. I think there's
60?
around 60
Wow.
sped students. But we really wanted to focus on individual, the ones that could benefit from just a routine and more of structured just for them. So we
You
could get
have
more.
1 para for each.
One para per kid. Yep. And they went on these field trips. I mean, the swimming, they were right there in the mix of all of it. And it was just such a good experience. Feedback from parents was that it was very good. So,
And Mrs. Dixon, just to clarify with the 60 students, this might help Mrs. Perkins with her question. that ranges from a lot of different disability categories. So in that, some of those students may only receive services such as speech and language, where other students might receive services for academic only. But I think the ones that Mrs. Dixon was talking about are ones that usually have a behavior, safety, things like that. And so they would probably be our higher need students that need as much support as possible. I don't want to use the word severe because that has a negative connotation, but they're the students that require a lot of support. And it was awesome with that. Does that help answer that question, Mrs. Perkins?
Yes, I was just thinking not all of the kids were invited then.
No, we just kept it to, we invited 5,
You
just
invited
because we weren't
5.
100% sure what we would get from that.
Okay.
The 3 were more hands-on, but we did invite some academic ones. The other 2 were more academic, but it didn't work out with schedule. But we figured now that we had this success, we could start preparing better for it, advertise better for it, and just like they get a week off before they start summer school. So for them, that was kind of like a good enough break. And then they were ready to come back. And then it was just the 3 weeks. But Mrs. Trio does an amazing job of having things for them to do, keeping them busy, and it was very successful. And Mrs. Trio had 27 migrant students. So she had 27 students of her own there, and then the 3 sped.
Okay.
So, but the next thing I want to share was just the summer work readiness program. So this has kind of been my baby. I guess this is my 2nd summer of being able to put this together. And I'm really proud of what we've been able to accomplish with it. This is just kind of a flyer that we give out to the kids. We just send this out before to the kids, just trying to make it for their parents to know exactly how it's set up. So it's set up through Voc Rehab. You have to be on an IEP or have a 504 to be able to qualify for this program. So not every kid can get this. But through Voc Rehab, their biggest thing is they want to get students having that work experience so that they can not, when they go out into the workforce, they're not getting fired the very first day they go out. And so that's something we're really working hard on is social skills, behaviors, how to act. Mrs. DeGraw has been amazing. We worked with Mrs. DeGraw to have them fill out a job application. And then they actually come and sit in with her, not me, for an interview because they're very comfortable with me. So we wanted it to be more professional. And she has to interview them, ask questions. And then we had 4 students that did it this summer. 3 of them had done it our first year. So we had 1 new this year, but out of the 4, the 2 of them were completely independent. We still were around and knew what they were doing, but 1 worked with maintenance completely. He was under Mr. Erickson's supervision and he did amazing. I never had to intervene or step in. He just knew his roles and just went. The other 3 were ones that I spent a little more time with and were a little bit more hands-on. If you look in this picture, you can see good old Hamer right there, Nedra.
You bet.
That was one of our favorite projects.
The lawn looks great.
One of my favorite projects. We stepped in and we were able to help the maintenance crew up there with the lawn. And by the end of the summer, we did have 2 of them learn how to drive the 0 turn. And it was a lot of fun and it was good for them to have to go and do jobs they don't always like. We spent a lot of time in this building as well. If you go to the next one, Mr. Williams. These were 2 really, really big projects. I don't know if you'd seen these rooms before. I wish we had a before and after for both of these rooms, but
I'm glad we don't have a before and after, Mrs. Dixon. So, just imagine the Porters. Have you ever heard of that show?
The room on the right was a really, really big project that it took a lot of hands-on, but we were able to completely gut it, get the carpets cleaned. And then the room on the left is the computer room in this building, but it was a lot of fun for our kids and it teaches them to do things that they don't always like. I think that was what I like about this program is because sometimes I didn't really like what we were doing either, but I'm like, that's just how it is in jobs. And we were able to teach them to fight through when they didn't want to do it. And
So how long did this last? They had 60 hours?
Yeah, so they got 60 hours, and the thing I
Okay.
love about this is we could send it up individually with the parents. So if some of them were gone for swim lessons 1 week, they just took that week off. And then we just worked and set up their hours the next
That's
week.
not a bad salary.
It's not, it's pretty
They,
awesome.
they were able to make quite a bit of money.
They did.
Did they get their 60 hours?
Yes, we were 3 hours short for one of our kids, but everyone else hit their 60 hours. So, and I do sacrifice a lot of my time to be here with them, but for me, it's very rewarding as a teacher because it's a different setting for me to get to know my kids. It's not just in the classroom, it's not just academic. And it's actually made me be a better teacher because I see them in a different way. And we have a better connection when we come back. So
Is this a grant?
this is just through Voc Rehab. So we go through Voc Rehab to get the funds to do it, and they reimburse the district for it.
Voc Rehab provides funding from the state to help students with disabilities. And so they also have an adult program to help them in the same way, help them with a job coach if they need to have an assistant with them when they're working at a job and so. But they have really helped us take advantage of these funds that are available to help prepare our students for life.
That has just been my biggest goal is I want to do a better job of helping prepare them to leave us because 4 years goes by really fast and then we send them out in the job force and sometimes they don't even know how to fill out a application. And so we work closely with Voc Rehab. The representative will be coming out here quite a bit this year. We're gonna get him going with us a little bit more. Mrs. DeGrom mentioned the adult service. I am happy to report we have one student who graduated in May from our school. And right now he is working with Voc Rehab to get his CDL and he is taking the classes through Voc Rehab through, what trucking, I can't think of the trucking company, but it's paid through Voc Rehab, so he doesn't have to pay for it. So just lots of good options happening for our students. So
That's wonderful.
you have any other questions?
So sometimes they would work for individual people, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
It didn't have to be a school.
No, we also would go to Rock Necks.
Oh,
So
to
Rock Necks, this was the second summer that we worked at Rock Necks as well. And I would like to keep trying to build that a little bit more. We have a good relationship with their manager down there that it worked. But I would like to try to open it up to more places, but it's just hard in our small community.
And you said 4 kids did this, and how many could have?
If you are on an IEP or a 504, you can qualify to do it.
You're not sure of that number.
Yeah, no, there's in the high school, there is 22 kids. So we could have more kids do it, but
And would you be able to get the money for that many kids, or is it limited?
no, we just have to go through the application
application
process.
Okay.
So, yep. Okay, thank you.
And don't they have to be, Mrs. Dixon, don't they have to be like a junior or senior?
Yeah,
Or age?
we did have, we don't have 8th graders do it. We did have a freshman that was turning a junior start it last year, so. But, so we try not to have any freshmen do it.
Me a sophomore.
Yeah, they're gonna be a sophomore. So we don't have 8th graders do it, is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you, Mrs. Dixon. Okay, Mr. Williams, did you want to jump to Mrs. Erickson next?
Yes, let's go to Mrs. Erickson.
Thank you.
And Mrs. Erickson, just say scroll since I can't quite.
Okay. I was just trying to be a wordy with my falling into rhythm. Your art for Mr. Williams. When we have our hunt, which is what Annie calls me, Shane, and Christy, he has to deal with 2 English teachers now, and I was trained by the first one, and so the 2 of us together have a lot of words. Okay, you can scroll. Speaking of a lot of words, it took a lot of words for that. Okay, we loved the opportunity to go to Solution Tree this summer. And one of my favorite sessions that we went to was one about building a culture of learning in your school. And this guy, I knew I was where I belonged when I walked in, and they had BYU Vocal Point doing a mashup of Greatest Showman, like singing and dancing, and I was like, okay,
He's
I
our
could tell I'm in the right place. So the man that presented there was just talking about how when you think of cultures that have lasted a long time, like organizations with cultures like the military and churches and even like the Olympics, those are surrounded with like celebrations and rituals and ceremonies and just like togetherness and unity. And he talked about how his school and some other schools had made big changes in how students looked at learning and embraced learning just by doing some simple things of like a weekly, like a pep assembly, or it's just something to motivate learning. So I'm all about the big show. And so we picked a theme this year, superhero. And but when I say we, I mean I picked a theme, superhero. And each month we are focusing on a different letter. So the first month we talked about self-assuring, like telling themselves when they get to something hard. I had the students say, what do you do when you get to something hard? You say, I got this. And so the kids that would practice that. And Mr. Cottle very graciously came and talked to our students about how his choice to keep going in really tough times is why he's still with us and like so amazing today. And it was really inspiring for the kids. And he was nervous. And I was not nervous for what he's gonna say, because he had presented to my scouts before, but we didn't know how little kids were gonna handle that, and they were just riveted on him the whole time, and he really did inspire our students, and it was exciting for them to get to know a member of the school board that well, and he just did a great job. Thank you, Mr. Cottle, for doing that for us.
Was that an assembly?
Yep, it was an assembly. So in the first month, I did a whole school assembly for pre-K through 4. So we had to do it twice actually. And then I brought them in for 5 through 8. And I just like introduced our theme and kind of that we were going to be doing these rallies every Monday for first grade through 6th grade. I do them in 2 sections. And that this was our theme and that we were going to be doing, you know, we celebrate celebrations, we celebrate birthdays, we celebrate learning, we commit to learning. And so one of the things that I do, you can scroll now. Oh, no, don't scroll yet. I will talk about what we do in the pep assemblies next. So then this month, the letter has been unfettered. And the junior high, we do an assembly per month. I don't do weekly with them. So for the junior high, Mr. Hall talked about unfettered and how fetters are chains that keep us shackled back. And like in the Roman ships, like if the ship went down, the slaves went down with them. And so he talked about some of the things that hold us back, like fear, concern, doubt in ourselves, concern about what other people are saying about us, and how we need to not let those things hold us back. But he also said you can't just do whatever you want. So you still need to be anchored to morals and good choices. And so I thought he really covered that really well. Okay, now you can scroll. And then each month we'll just cover a different one. And so if I come back, I'll tell you what the other ones are. Okay, so that's Pantherlina, my twin sister, who is a Panther superhero. The kids are always telling me that it's me, and I'm always telling them, what you talking about? That's not me. I'm Mrs. E. Or they'll say Mrs. E when my sister is Pantherlina. And I'll be like, I'm not Mrs. E. Or she'll be like, I'm not saying, I'm getting confused with the lies. So any kid that has said it enough times, now I'm like, okay, but it's like Batman. You can't let them know that Bruce Wayne is Batman. So it's just a fun joke that we play. But every week, the teachers nominate a student from their classroom, or if they feel like they want to, they can do that too. We've ordered them water bottles, something useful, and then they get to pick a superhero sticker to put on their water bottle. And I've asked the teachers to first say what it was, what commitment to learning, and it can be social, emotional, academic, just commitment to learning. A lot of them are talking about students who show up on time, who stick it out, even if it's hard, especially in those younger grades. These first couple weeks of school are intense, especially for first graders as they adjust. And so they're every week. These teachers, we cheer for them, and they are talking about, you know, the things, the good qualities that students are showing, and then those students come up and they get recognized, and we give them like in the younger grades, we give them a rah. If they do, we do a lot of Panther roars. That was one of the things that the guy showed us. He had a whole room of adults roaring together. In fact, I think we should try it right now. But get your claws out. 1, 2, 3. Rah! They love it. And then in the older grades, because they have a little better rhythm, we do a hoo hoo rah. Like that's what we do. So then in the 7th and 8th grade, we just meet once a month, and the teachers nominated these learners. So that's which McAnally is that? Do you know?
That
Is it McKinley?
The
McAnally?
oldest one.
The oldest.
one. What is it?
There's
Meredith?
Kel,
McKinley.
McKinley McAnally,
Not McKinley.
Kel.
Kel,
No, that's not Kel.
it's not
No.
Kel, Kel is the middle
Kel's the
one,
middle one.
so that's Kaylee, McKinley,
Oh,
we got there. Oh, can I say the names of students that got recognized?
Yeah.
On this school board meeting,
Yeah, you
because
can
it's a
say-
recognition?
you can say pause.
Yes, you can.
Okay, so then that's Wiley Day, and then Santiago Losa, and Kinsey Close, she's from Manan. Michael Contreras, he's new this year from California, and in fact, his mom works at the lunchroom. Gavin Hutchings, and I think that's Braley Black.
Yeah.
So, and then those two dudes in front are our student body president and our student body vice president. This last one, we had a pep rally before. They're supposed to be soccer announcers, and they announced all the teams. So, you can scroll down. But the kids we have them yell their graduation year. We talk about how we want them to be excellent in learning, and they got to show up every day and work really hard so that we can show the whole world that we're the best school on earth. I'm just constantly trying to encourage them. And I'll get on the speaker in the morning and say, how'd you come to school today? And you'll probably hear it sometime. They say, they do that at the beginning of this too. And we just do some cheers. We celebrate birthdays for the week. It's good vibes. Okay, so diving into the new curriculums has been really exciting. Go ahead and scroll down. Just as a reminder, this year we're doing Bridges math, and it is intense. They have a lot of manipulatives that they have to manage, and it is a totally new way of teaching and thinking. Just like in English language arts, math is now spiraling frequently. And so that the purpose of that is retention. So when they see these concepts throughout the year spiraling, it's interesting because it does leave some things open-ended. And there are days when the teachers go, I don't feel good about that. I'm going to close that. And I said, I trust you as educators to go back and close that question that you feel like is gaping out there in the open. And so they are working hard, and it is so interesting to listen and see. And I especially love the culture of courage that it's encouraging, because it's very, let's talk through this problem. What do you think? What do you think? Oh, I love that you tried that you were brave and gave that. I'm next to Miss Allen, and she is a master educator, and she is so good at supporting students and being brave, and then saying, even Miss Allen made a mistake right there, and she just talks like that. And that is the nature of both of these curriculums. CKLA finally arrived, and then we just now got the digital onboarding, but our teachers are rock stars. They went and found online resources so they could start before everything got here. I did learn that Edna Mode in The Incredibles is right about capes. When one of the days we were moving curriculum around, I had my cape on, and I kept getting it stuck under boxes, and wheels were rolling over, so I almost died in the separating of that curriculum. And then our PLTs, our professional learning teams, are going steady at each grade level. We've got people meeting about, okay, what's our plan next? How are we moving forward? So they're going through this together, and they're just working so hard. When I asked them recently to send me what's your plan to the end of quarter, I didn't say how, they all looked completely different, and I'm totally fine with that, because what works for one team doesn't work for another. I got a huge variety, but everybody is using the curriculum. And that is what I wanted to be able to come back to you, because you had asked, how do we guarantee that all this money we just invested, you have given us in the last 5 to 7 years a new science curriculum, a new social studies curriculum in the middle school, a new SEL curriculum, a new math curriculum, a new phonics curriculum, and now a new ELA curriculum. We're moving on up. Things are going good. We got shiny new everything, and we have the staff to make it happen. I'm excited. I did want to say something about the test scores. One thing that's different between our school and a lot of others, you've already identified it, is we do have a lot of English language learners, but they're awesome. They're bright. They will get there, and this will help them even more. There are a lot of awesome resources in both Bridges and CKLA for Spanish speaking students so that they can learn the concepts while they're still learning the language. And I think that's a really important thing to point out. Yes, Kendra.
So how long do we give you until we ask you to come back and tell us how Bridges is doing and how CKLA is doing?
I can come back as often as you want.
Well, I wanted to know when you're gonna see improvement and what that improvement is. So how long is that? What are you
So we do monthly data meetings, and they are doing they're doing interventions too. As far as like the overall impact of the curriculums themselves, I think that it's going to take a year to get used to it, but I still think we are going to see a positive impact this year because, as we mentioned in the original meeting, ELA was in sore need of like a new curriculum, and that is going to be really helpful for our students. Already the teachers are jazzed about it, and they're jazzed about Bridges too. They've already found all these awesome resources that are letting them do amazing common formative assessments that show where kids are like visually when they start. So they know which kids are gonna struggle with which standards, and they can appoint their paras and their student teachers, and they themselves can take the time to give extra help to those students. It is brilliant. It is the way education is supposed to work, basically.
Okay.
And so our teachers are just working so hard, and the kids are too. They are showing up ready to learn. Okay, Shane, go ahead and scroll. Okay, so September 11th, the 5th and 6th grade teachers have initiated Mrs. Reeder, bless her soul. She trains some boys in the flag ceremony. And so on September 11th, we did observe a flag ceremony that morning. Go ahead and scroll down to the picture. It was the most beautiful, and I'm probably gonna get emotional on these last two slides because standing there in that huge U of children who were so reverent through the whole thing. It killed me. Those little kindergartners and first grades, they did not take their hands off their heart the entire time. And as soon as those sweet boys got that flag up, it was like the breeze picked up right then and blew the flag. And then these 3 birds flew over in like aircraft formation. And then Mr. Reese played that thing, and it was just like so beautiful. They were so reverent. And then Mr. Starbaum spoke about superheroes, like being a true hero in everyday life, and how there were heroes on 9/11 that gave up their personal safety to try and help other people. But then he talked about how we can be heroes just in everyday life, smiling at people, trying to help people out and being kind. So that was a really awesome experience. Mr. Hall didn't have to, like, we did K through 6. Pre-K through 6, Mr. Hall brought his students out, and he said that was very moving. We sang America the Beautiful all together at the end, and it was just really awesome. My group, we did it. They did bring the flag back down to half mast as you're supposed to that day. And then those same boys came back down and put it back up to full mast the next morning. So it was awesome. Okay, you can go down. And then the last thing, we've already talked about the rally for Rube, but I have to tell you, you can keep going down, Shane. Okay, this is like a small crowd. I cannot tell you how many hundreds of people have shown up, and every day the kids keep coming with money from their parents. We've had people come in beforehand and buy like 5 things and leave $100 bill or a $50 bill. Someone gave an envelope of like $1,000 just like anonymously. Like, our community is showing up for this family. People are doing things on Venmo. But the sweetest thing that I wanted to tell you about is when we were getting ready to announce this in my 5th and 6th grade pep assembly, I was telling them about Rue and a lot of them know her already. So one of the kids said, raised his hand before we even started talking about what we were gonna do about it, and he said, I think we should give Rue and her family a hoorah. And I was like, and so they did, the fifth and sixth graders were like, hoorah, and it was like really loud. And then another kid was like, I think we should say a prayer for her. And I said, well, that's tricky in schools because I can't require you to say a prayer, but we can do a moment of silence. And if you want to pray during that moment of silence, you can. So we did a moment of silence and I opened my eyes before most everyone else, and that whole room of children were praying for little Rue. All of them. It was, oh my gosh, like where else on earth would that happen? I mean, probably other places, I hope, but it happens here. That was the kids. And then they started going, let's put change jars in our classrooms and have competitions, and let's do this and let's do that. And I said, okay, you guys are awesome. Can we draw pictures and send them to them? Can we do a big card? Can we, a little Mason who lost a sibling, remember the kind things that people had done for their family when they were down there. And she was right at the front suggesting those things. So I was so proud of those kids that day. It was amazing. And we have raised, they said they think it's over $4,000 in 3 days. This community shows up. And that is going to be really helpful. And then they're doing it again at that senior thing. So I am proud to be a Panther. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to work with these amazing students, teachers, and families. And I'm still figuring out how to be a principal, but I love it. I just really love it. So thank you for the opportunity and thank you for letting me report on our amazing school. So thank you. Any questions? Okay,
Thank you, Mrs.
thanks.
Erickson. Last but not least,
Great follow Panther Nina's sister. That's terrible. All right, we have our student body president, Ryan DeGraw here. We had senior class council member Boone Burnshaw, and he has a dual credit 7th hour class, so he had to escape to class, but I'll help him figure this out. We do the best kids in the elementary, in the junior high, in the high school. I am so privileged to get to work with these kids. It's just magical. Okay. You want to start?
Yeah, so this summer, well, you can go to the next slide. This summer, leadership had a really cool opportunity to do the Hammer 4th of July. And we did that for a fundraiser and it turned out to be really successful. But there were a lot of different steps that were involved. It was a really large project and people showed up. People donated.
Mr. Williams, do you want to scroll to the next picture so they can look at the pictures while talks about this?
So beforehand, we asked people to donate just because it helps. And people donated quite a bit, and the community did too. That wasn't just the only thing they donated their time. As you see, there's a lot of different people, not even people in our leadership that are helping serve food. And so at the event, we served food and we we almost watched a full fire. I'm not even gonna talk about the fireworks, but
Still too rough.
people really liked it and we raised, I think we served almost 500 people and raised $200 or $2,000 for leadership. And so that was huge improvement compared to the Mud Lake Fair, which we had been doing for the past couple of years. And so this was a really good opportunity for us to serve the community as leaders, which I believe our purpose is to serve the community, and to raise money to help the school more. And so this was just a perfect opportunity and it turned out really well because people showed up to help, people donated. The next thing we did this summer, if you wanna scroll, was we helped get signatures for a letter we're sending to our governor, Brad Little. Some farmers asked Miss Dowling if we could help them, because sometimes farmers are always busy, and so as leaders, we thought might as well help the community. It's an issue that we're facing right now, and so we set up at the fair, and we'd set up at Brolam's, and we got, not sure the number of signatures, but we got quite
Pages of signatures.
a lot of signatures in support of finding out a solution for this water curtailment, because it really is a big problem that we're facing. And so we got to do that, and that was a great opportunity.
And then in return, the water curtailment, it was the Clark Jefferson Water District or board, whatever. They made a donation to student council for doing that, which was so generous of them.
Where did you go to get signatures?
We went to Brolam's in Rexburg, Rigby. Did we go out?
Just Rexburg and then Mud Lake Fair.
Oh, we didn't go Rigby. And so Mud Lake Fair also.
And then Du Bois.
So you didn't go house to house, you just went to places.
Sat there. The water users talked to the Rollins all through the valley, and there were groups at every Rollins from Blackfoot to Tetonia on Saturdays. So the farmers thought it would be easier to have someone else do it. It was great.
Yeah, it was pretty successful.
Okay, now my turn. Since school has started, we've had phone parties, pep rallies, we're planning senior nights and homecoming. Next slide. The first week of school, we had school on that Friday, and it was only high school that was in, and so we threw a party. Well, we went to school too, but we had an assembly where we went over the handbook, student handbook, and then we played kickball in the foam, and it was really fun. Some of the girls were pretty timid about getting dirty because it would mess up their hair. But by the end, there were some that did it, and we had quite a few teachers that got into it. It was a really fun activity.
What kind of foam is that?
So Mrs. Scott rented it from in town. It's just, it doesn't itch. It's not like you put the soap in with the water and it bubbles and non-toxic.
It's huge.
It was so fun. Nedra, it was fabulous. Kirsty went and laid in it. It was great. After the kids left, Mrs. Scott did.
Picture?
We got one of her and Sonnet in it. Not laying, but like it was great. It was really fun. And then we also had 2 weeks ago before the cross-country volleyball and football game, we had a pep assembly. And the students asked Coach Hadley to give a motivational speech, and it was great. Talked about encouraging us to be proud of West Jefferson, which we are, and to be kind. And it was talked about the name why they pick their numbers and who they're representing when they're playing, who they represent when they're walking down the hallway. It's not just them, it's siblings and family members. Eli Sullivan wears Keston Newman's number because it's Keston's number. Bert Halls wear number 2 because that's what they were number 2. Burton Shaw's, a lot of them are for generations, and
I
it's
didn't know they
bigger
could
than them.
choose their own numbers.
For football,
For
they
football.
football. I don't know volleyball, basketball. It's just whatever numbers they have left, but
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. And so it was a very cool speech. And then these girls and boys have senior night coming up. Football senior night will actually be during Spud Harvest because homecoming is going to be our last game. But talked to Coach Hall and he didn't want to do both together. We just, he said it'd be okay if we didn't do both together. He just wants to win. He's not too worried about the details. But he supported that. So we're doing senior night for football during Spud Harvest on October 4th. Be watching for a TikTok and reel on Instagram and Facebook will make all the mamas cry. It's pretty cool about the seniors. And then volleyball and cross country will be during homecoming week, which is pretty awesome. And we'll recognize their senior night that night. Cross country will be represented the same night during volleyball. So those are just pictures of our senior athletes right now, our fall senior athletes.
See Haley on.
You did see Haley in it. Isn't she cute? She is so cute. We love Haley.
Tearing it up, man.
She's a library regular. I'm a big fan of her. We also announced our homecoming theme this year. It's gonna be Feeling Lucky, Vegas. Gonna be October 14th through 19th. We're very excited to have a Friday that week, so thank you. That's gonna be a really fun thing. So the game will be on the 18th on Friday, and we've been working really hard planning and designing shirts, designing plans, organizing games, organizing service projects. It's just gonna be a really fun day, fun week. And then next, parking update. Just had to throw that in at the end. So we went off of the board's policy, but what did the board?
You followed the board's policy to build your procedure.
We followed the board's policy to build procedure. And every spot up front has been paid for and reserved, every spot. Woo! And kids were excited, even more painted this year. I see that becoming a tradition that will grow more and more. And you should just drive through one evening. It's pretty fun to see some of the things they did. But the kids were really excited. They have their passes, and then in the back, we've been working on getting they have different color passes in the back, whether they're freshmen or sophomores, juniors, so. I mean, seniors, juniors, so. Everyone that won one pretty much got a spot though, which is pretty cool, but we announced it for a week or two, so they had time to come in and make sure they got one.
And we didn't have any kids that were upset about this year. No.
Well, there were some that were upset about providing insurance information or registration, or license.
Really?
But we explained, that is policy, they have to park here, you have to have a license. So it's been kind of, but before they could get their pass, they had to have those papers filled out and they had to turn them in. Ms. Hogan is working over at the high school now, and she was there for registration. And when the parents came up and were kind of a little bit irritated, a little bit, she would just say, that's just the rules. That's just the rules. And it's true. Parking here is a privilege. And once you say that's a rule, they said, okay, and they did it. And I feel so much better knowing that we have documentation for that, that if we have accidents like we did the past couple of years, it will be nice to know that they have insurance, they have licenses. It will make a difference, I think, in the safety of our students here.
Very good.
Do you have any questions?
Any other questions or comments? Thank you for letting us come talk to you guys about leadership.
Thank you.
Great. Mr. Williams, did you have anything else in your superintendent report?
You
No,
do.
madam.
Mrs. DeGrasse, as you might.
Thank you.
No, I'm ready to move on.
Thank you.
All right,
Very generous.
5-2 is our supplemental levy and plant facility election is coming right up on November 5th.
Yeah, I have nothing new to present on this. I just wanted to give the board an opportunity to discuss it if they wanted to.
We will have our October meeting before the election.
Well, we're on 5-2. We're on the levy and.
Sorry.
No,
So are you sending out mailers, just informing people when the election?
Right. There is some required language that we have to have in any of our mailers. And so we need to work with our lawyers to make sure that we meet all of those qualifications before we mail that out. And so we will make sure that that information is shared.
Last time I commented, I got my name in the paper, so I'm.
about the levy?
Last board meeting. I don't know where they got it from, but they must.
Lisa Reporter watches our board meetings.
Well, good to know. All right. And then policy first reading for these 8,000 series.
There's the 8,000
There's a few.
series and then the
Oh,
board
15.
operating procedures and protocols.
Okay.
Mrs. DeGraw, would you be willing to speak on these if you would please?
Yep, so this is the last of the 8,000 series that we need to approve to finalize, and so I will get you each a hard copy of these. And then you guys can look at that. If you have changes, we'll make them. If they're not significant, then we will move to a second reading next month.
That's good. Thank you, Mrs. DeGraw. Okay,
And then our board operating procedures and protocols, there were just a couple of changes we needed to make on that, so.
Do you want me to open those up so they can be discussed? Or are we good?
we'll wait till Mrs. DeGraw gives us a copy and we'll read through them.
Those are the two we had to fix, weren't they?
The
Those
board
two.
one,
The two on the end,
it was just the bottom one.
the
that-
bottom one.
That we had a correction on. We had put these 8,000 on our work meeting. But with all of the new legally required policies, we had to push this to the back burner.
And so is it done?
Those other ones,
Is
Yeah.
this one done?
they should be.
Sounds good. Okay, we have a couple upcoming things. Our next regular meeting will be October 19th. The ISBA convention in Boise is November 6th through the 8th. And just a shout out tonight for the FFA fundraiser. It's at 6:30 at the fairgrounds. It's a pig wrestling. It's gonna be fine. So come hungry, they have concessions, and that'll be fun.
And I do, Madam Chair, need somebody to take my spot on my pig wrestling team as I'm feeling way under the weather. So if, is there anybody that you could appoint there from the board? I don't know, Mrs. Perkins. For it.
All right, I'll do it.
No. All over it.
No, I'm just kidding.
Mr. Burtonshaw could not be here, so obviously he is the choice.
Perfect, thank you. And thank you, Madam Chair, and Mrs. DeGraw for setting this up to allow me to still be part of this as I'm feeling under the weather. Appreciate everybody. That's all I have.
You get feeling better.
Thank you.
Board, we open for a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, I so move.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Those in favor?
Bye.
Any opposed? There never is. Motion passes. Thank you.